is damaging to the United States. It's damaging to the United States because it gives too many people too many chances of not doing their jobs, specifically the United States media. The media needs to back off. They're damaging themselves. They're hurting themselves as they do all this. They're not doing their jobs. They are not actually reporting the story. What they're doing is they are doing all manner of things to bury the lead of the news every single day. You know, these people who saved the United States, part of the greatest generation, are worth covering. It is such a basic capability that even CNN got it right when they were reporting both sides of this. But you can always count on Sophie Tatum and Dan Merica, to come up with some sort of way of throwing dirt on the president, even when he's trying to do something to make things better between himself and the diverse peoples of the United States. My God, President Jackson was in a picture. Oh, my God. Really? Do we really have to do that? I mean, do we really have to go that far? Is that really what we want to do? Do we really want to be that big a collection of jerks? I guess CNN does. I guess that's the way they figure they should handle their lives and so on. President Trump, by the way, please use Pocahontas in the future. It's not an Indian word. Everybody will be happy-ish, give or take. I'm just saying. You're listening to the Wells Report. This is the USA Radio Network. Back with more in just a moment. That was a little late.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, a little bit.
I wasn't looking at the clock exactly.
It was a couple of seconds. Doesn't that typically fire automatically?
Yeah, it does. Let me mark that one so I can check that one.
I think it was on time yesterday. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much, the Philip Brown. Nice addition to the broadcast.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Let's see here. I want to do that. And then I want to do that. Then I want to do, well, go away. Shoo. Thank you. Ice, not the snare.
Wow, so looks like North Korea shot another missile.
Yep, I saw that earlier today. That happened earlier. Drag City, my friend. Wow, that's kind of weird. Let's try that one more time. Huh. Okay. All righty. Fine. Be that way if you want to. I don't care.
All right, we got 1 minute.
1 flipping minute.
All right, back in 10 seconds.
10 dang seconds. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number again is 844-927-6691. U.S. officials are now confirming the North Koreans have launched a ballistic missile. A military official told NBC News the missile was launched towards the east, toward the Sea of Japan. The launch reportedly came from the South Pyongyang province in North Korea. It's the first missile launch by North Korea in about 2 months. So that's out there. We're keeping our eyes on that. If anything pops up, we'll let you know here on the Wells Report on the USA Radio Network. Okay, so we've been watching. Well, let's see. It's not exactly the way I want to say that. Let's say this. I guess we've been following a story that started when I saw this headline: Columbia Sportswear may close their Portland office. Portland, Oregon. Columbia Sportswear may close their Portland, Oregon office. And I was reading the headline and it said because there are death threats and public defecation by homeless people. I went, excuse me? Columbia Sportswear may be the next business to flee downtown Portland after a series of frightening encounters with the city's homeless, including car break-ins and human waste dumped by the office's front door and threats to its employees. In an op-ed piece published earlier this month by the Oregonian, Columbia Sportswear president and CEO Tim Boyle said he's concerned that he made a mistake when opening a headquarters for the company, Sorel Footwear, downtown, calling the situation outrageous and unacceptable. In fact, I am so concerned about the safety of our employees at the Sorel headquarters that we are taking the next 90 days to reevaluate our location decision. I suppose a bucket of excrement on the front door is probably going to make that an easier decision. I could be wrong. Since moving 50 employees downtown, workers immediately reported being harassed and threatened by homeless people near their offices. A few days ago, one of our employees had to run into traffic when a stranger outside the office followed her and threatened to kill her. On other occasions, employees have arrived to work only to be menaced by individuals camping in the doorway. By the way, in case you're wondering, employees have also been the target of so many car break-ins, the company has started to refer to parking downtown as its laptop donor program. So I was sitting there going, my gosh, that's terrible, that's vulgar, that's awful, and unfortunately, it is kind of becoming a way of life on the West Coast. And you're going, what? An outbreak of hepatitis A is spreading through Los Angeles County after being spread to Los Angeles County by people in San Diego. Thousands of people are now threatened by hepatitis A because local officials have not done enough to contain the deadly disease. Hundreds of cases have turned up in Southern California, as well as Michigan, but conditions in Los Angeles, where 50,000 people live in the streets, have prompted deeper concerns. This is a problem in San Diego and LA. It's warm there. there's a huge homeless population, and they do defecate in the streets. And strangely enough, diseases are beginning to show up because people are defecating in the streets. Have I told you that California and Oregon and yes, Washington State are the veritable crucibles, the actual crux of the liberal movement in the United States? I probably should have. Unbelievable. You are listening to the Wells Report. This is the USA Radio Network. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment.
All right, man. Sounding good.
Why, thank you.
And we got about 6 minutes. 6.5.
6 minutes. Why, thank you.
I'm going to run to the kitchen real quick, man. I'll be right back.
Please do that. I think I'll do the same thing. I've got some cheese and fruit. Please stand by.
All right.
Are you hungry? Okay. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. How's the audio, everybody? Wait. Hello?
Yes, sir. We're back right now. 10 seconds. Sorry about that.
No problem. North to south, coast to coast, this is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. Thanks for joining us today. The very latest in the sexual harassment epidemic that is currently coursing around America goes like this. The woman who settled a sexual harassment complaint with Democrat Michigan Representative John Conyers wants to go public and tell her story. She cannot, by the way, because she signed a confidentiality agreement. It bars her from doing so. She has asked John Conyers for an opportunity to embarrass him publicly. The woman is a former staffer for Conyers. She is asking him to lift the confidentiality agreement she signed as part of the settlement agreement in 2015. She says she was fired for rebuffing Conyers' sexual advances in 2014. Conyers paid the woman more than $27,000 in taxpayer funds in exchange for her silence. Even if Conyers won't lift the confidentiality agreement, the woman's attorney said she would be happy to testify if subpoenaed, which would automatically void the agreement. I would be happy to accept service for a subpoena for my client's testimony from the Health Ethics Committee or any other appropriate body, said Lisa Bloom, the woman's attorney. She and I will fully cooperate with any investigation into this matter, of course, because she gets to take down a sitting United States congressman, even though she agreed not to take down a sitting United States congressman and indeed was paid to do so. You know what I'm trying to figure out is this. I'm trying to figure out, okay, so if you give up the right to complain, whether you're paid for or not, whether you're paid to do so or not, does that actually mean anything anymore? Doesn't that mean, at least at some level, that you gave up the right to complain? Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. This is turning out to be quite a story. This is turning out to be quite a deal, but there are realities to it. And you can always count on me to bring up the realities. For example, if you sign a non-disclosure agreement, you've signed a non-disclosure agreement. Maybe next time what you do is you don't sign the non-disclosure agreement. And if somebody has a complaint about sexual harassment, if somebody has a complaint about sexual harassment, make it. If you don't have a complaint about sexual harassment, don't make it. But if you decide not to make it, you've decided not to make it, especially if you got paid to not make it and signed a paper saying you wouldn't make it. Is there a credibility issue there, or am I just, I don't know, not seeing the realities of this clearly enough? The state of Florida has paid over make that $11 million over a 30-year period to settle hundreds of cases that alleged state workers were sexually harassed by supervisors and coworkers or were forced to work in a hostile work environment. The Associated Press requested the information from the state agency that tracks payments made to settle lawsuits filed against state agencies and state universities. The information released yesterday showed more than 300 cases have resulted in payments since 1987. Amounts ranged from a $5,500 payment to a Florida State University student who alleged harassment from her supervisor to a $1.3 million payout to settle a class action lawsuit filed by nurses who worked at state prisons. Nearly 60% of the cases involved employees who worked at the Department of Corrections. According to the Huffington Post, Democrats believe that both parties have a sexual harassment problem. Republicans say the Democrats do. Ariel Edwards-Levy writes this. In Congress, Senator Al Franken, the Democrat from Minnesota, apologized after a series of groping allegations. Representative John Conyers, the Democrat from Michigan, denied multiple allegations of sexual harassment, but announced he was stepping down as ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. On the campaign trail in Alabama, Republican Senate nominee Roy Moore continues to deny a swath of allegations that he preyed, P-R-E-Y-E-D, preyed on teen girls. Well, I guess that's a lot less inflammatory than being called a child molester on national television when there's no proof that we are aware of. Thank you, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. Unbelievable. And because it's the Huffington Post, obviously Donald Trump is still facing accusations of sexual misconduct by more than a dozen women. Okay. So that's the very latest. There is, however, one other article that I think is amazing. Angela Lansbury says she believes that women must, at least partially, be held accountable in instances of sexual harassment. Yeah. In an interview with Radio Times, the actress who played Jessica Fletcher in the television series Murder, She Wrote, said women are to some degree responsible. There are two sides to this coin. We have to own up to the fact that women, since time immemorial, have gone out of their way to make themselves attractive. Unfortunately, it has backfired on us, and this is where we are today. What do you think of that statement? There are two sides to this coin. We have to own up to the fact that women, since time immemorial, have gone out of their way to make themselves attractive. And unfortunately, it has backfired on us, and this is where we are today. She continued by saying, we must sometimes take blame, women. I really do think that. Although it's awful to say we can't make ourselves look as attractive as possible without being knocked down and raped. She's got a point. Women should be able to make themselves look attractive. I don't think there's any problem with that whatsoever. I think that's fine. What I'm also trying to figure out here is I'm trying to figure out, is there something to what Angela Lansbury is saying? Are there indeed two sides to this coin? That's why I've asked you to come up with a part in this Wells Report instant poll. We're going to do a Wells Report instant poll. Does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no, and why? The Wells Report instant poll. Does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no, and why? 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. The Wells Report Instant Poll question: does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no, and why? 844-927-6691. If you've never taken part in a Wells Report Instant Poll, this is a great way to break yourself into talk radio, because you don't have to worry about getting argued with. All I'm interested in is your answer. I'm just gonna write it down in a column that I have here. Got my pen ready. Telephone number is 844-927-6691. Does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no, and why? 844-927-6691. I'd like to get at least 10 people to respond to this. 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. The Wells Report Instant Poll question: does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no, and why? 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. Again, you don't have to worry about being argued with. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to write down your answer. I want to know whether or not makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment. Yes or no, and why? Let me get to Rick in Fort Worth. Rick, thanks very much for joining us. Welcome to the Wells Report. Hello.
Hey, JD. So my answer is two parts. Yes, for most people, but for me, no. The way I was raised, the way a woman looks, I treat all women with respect, or my father would have beat the tar out of me.
Yeah. And
exactly. I bet you were the same way.
Well, I mean, I was raised with two sisters. I mean, if I disrespected women, my sister would beat the tar out of me. It never got to my dad. I mean,
the key word there is respect, though.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've never done that. I have never, ever done that. As a matter of fact, I am the guy that says to all of my children the same thing that my mother told me. She said, mind your manners and keep your hands to yourself. Mind your manners.
Yep.
Keep your hands to yourself. It's great advice to this day. I mean, she started telling me that when I was in kindergarten. And of course, it meant different things.
The way we were raised.
Yeah, it meant different things. It meant different things in kindergarten than it did when you were in high school, but the statement was still perfect. First answer is no. Makeup, implants, provocative clothing do not make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment. What do you think? 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. Does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no? And why? 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. I'm very interested in hearing from the women. The Wells women, please join us. Does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Angela Lansbury says there are two sides to this coin. We have to own up to the fact that women, since time immemorial, have gone out of their way to make themselves attractive. Unfortunately, it's backfired on us. This is where we are. This is why we're here today. Do you agree with that statement? 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. This is not John David Wells apologizing for malfunctioning males creating sexual harassment among the females they know. This is, however, me trying to keep it real. 844-927-6691. This is the Wells Report on the USA Radio Network.
All right, sir. Sorry about my late return there. My rice blew up in the microwave.
I am back.
All right, sir. Sorry about my late return last time. My rice blew up in the microwave.
No problem. I wasn't worried about it, man.
All right, cool.
When I was saying hello, I wasn't actually talking to you. I was talking to the people in the chat room. The chat rheumatism. There you have it.
All right, well, you got 1 minute.
Okay, thanks. Jonathan Martin, you great big superstar. How are you doing, man? Good to see you.
All right, here we go.
Ready. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our instant poll question: does makeup, implants, and provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no, and why? Telephone number is 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. Would love to hear from you. There was another part of this story that's important as well, and that is the woman who essentially settled with Representative John Conyers of Michigan for some $27,000, from what we understand, something along that line. She settled to keep her mouth shut about the sexual harassment that Representative Conyers apparently foisted upon her. Now, She is asking him for permission to go ahead and speak about it. So you got paid $27,000 and agreed not to speak about it, but now you're asking for permission so that you can speak about it, so that what? You can take part in the publicity gravy train? I mean, the story's already out there, right? The story is that John Conyers sexually harassed at least one person that we're aware of. He's admitted it. There was a settlement that he said, yeah, that's what happened. And all of this, but when it comes right down to it, I still have to say, hey, at the end of it, you agreed not to talk. Why would John Conyers agree to let you continually embarrass him? Nobody held a gun to your head and made you sign that paper. Nobody held a gun to your head and made you endorse the check for $27,000. If you wanted to tell your story, you should have told your story then, which is a cautionary tale for women today. If you are indeed sexually harassed, document it. Do whatever you can to document it, because one of the things about the Judge Roy Moore case, there's no proof. Although, by the way, Gloria Allred is begging to be disbarred. You know what she said today? She said that Judge Roy Moore could see the yearbook if he agreed to testify. Excuse me? If I was Judge Roy Moore, I would file a lawsuit against Gloria Allred 5 minutes ago. And what I would have said was, you know what? I want that book under discovery. And that's all there is to it. What Allred is trying to do is try to build some credibility for that book. And there is none. There's none that can be built. She needs to be quiet, because that book represents forgery and fraud. Wow. Telephone number again, 844-927-6691. Should non-disclosure agreements about congressional sexual misconduct be voided? Now, here's where I have, I'm talking about this woman who wants to testify against John Conyers, right? And I'm using her as an example of saying, hey, wait a minute, didn't you agree not to talk? I don't know whether or not these non-disclosure agreements are good for this particular circumstance. If the Congress wants to do away with this sexual harassment slush fund, they can do so. But it's there for a reason. You can get rid of the slush fund, but you're not going to be able to get rid of the problem. You're just not. The Wells Report instant poll question. Do makeup, implants, provocative clothing make a woman more susceptible to sexual harassment? Yes or no, and why? Should non-disclosure agreements about congressional sexual misconduct be voided? I mean, when it comes right down to it, we're in a position where that's public money. That's our money that went to settle these cases. Does that mean we should be able to know why? 844-927-6691, 844-927-6691. Looking forward to your reply. You're listening to the Wells Report. This is the USA Radio Network. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment.
All right, sounding good.
Thank you, sir.
We're back in 1 minute.
Thanks, sir.
All right, back in 10.
Thank you, sir. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of the broadcast. 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. This show is coming to you from flyover country. That is the slang term of people, the movers and shakers, the culturati, the glitterati, the power elite of the United States seem to congregate on the coasts. We, however, live in the middle of America. I in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, almost smack dab in the middle of the country. The people on the coasts, and you can look at any electoral map having to do with a presidential election, the people on the coasts are decidedly leftist and blue, and they spend a lot of money on government. Those of us in the middle of the country, Missouri and Kansas and Texas and so on, except around the Great Lakes, which again becomes another monument to liberal ideology. You're still killing people in Chicago? Yeah, I thought so. All these people are very, very comfortable with flying over the United States of America and looking down at us and saying, look at all those poor people clutching their Bibles and their guns. Their Bible and their guns. And I look at that and I'm going, are you people serious? And apparently they are. And it's not just people like presidents. It's people like Joy Reid. Do you know who Joy Reid is? She is what is referred to as an anti-Trump MSNBC host. She is out with probably one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard any, quote, journalist, unquote, make. MSNBC host Joy Reid thinks that rural Americans are the core threat to our democracy, and pointed to a series of tweets by liberal author Jared Yates Sexton that claim Trump supporters, quote, do not believe in the Constitution or any founding principles unless they're advantageous, unquote. Yeah. By 2040, 70% of Americans are expected to live within the 15 largest states. They will only have 30 senators representing them, while the remaining 30% of Americans will have 70 senators representing them, says MSNBC producer Kyle Griffin. Reid, who thinks that's amazing, essentially uses the network to be anti-Trump as much as she possibly can. While Sexton never specifically mentioned the rural minority in his rant, the MSNBC host, this again, Joy Reid, took it upon herself to quote Griffin's tweet and add her own commentary tied to Sexton's thread. This is the core threat to our democracy, the rural minority. The People just wrote a long thread about, and I will continue to have disproportionate power, have and will continue to have disproportionate power over the urban majority. Really? Is that true? Reid said the gerrymandering reform and the abolition of the Electoral College would be a start when engaging with followers on how to fix the issue. Ms. Reid, the issue is that everybody in the United States gets to vote for the president. Everybody in the United States. And their votes get to count. If 70% of Americans are expected to live in the 15 largest states, that leaves 35 states that would have nothing to say about the president of the United States from now until time immemorial. See, this is what's got me shocked. See, everybody in the United States, that's what the Electoral College is for, to make sure that there is not a fraudulent overvote, which there was in the 2016 presidential election, and that everybody has a vote to take part in the president being chosen. Joy Reid thinks that this is perfectly okay. It's absolutely fine to be able to allow 15 states to choose who the presidents are time and time and time again. She believes that those 70 senators representing those people in flyover country, you know, like you and me, she thinks that should be left behind. The editor of Resurgence, radio host and Fox News contributor Eric Erickson, said this: that Kyle Griffin, MSNBC producer, the Kyle Griffin's original tweet and Reid's response highlight a core threat to our constitutional system: basic ignorance. Reid seems to use hateful logic and rhetoric on a regular basis as called Trump supporters deplorables, claimed that in living in Trump's America, the worst time to be a human in the history of the world, and referred to the Trump administration as the apocalypse. While outwardly mocking middle America, Reid pointed to the Twitter rant of the man who recently published an anti-Trump book called "People Are Going to Rise Like the Waters Upon Your Shore" that reflect on the Trump movement. Sexton recently tweeted that Midwesterners put up Confederate flags because of racism, but also dream of being able to rise up and remake this country into a fascist place. As opposed to what? A liberally fascist place? While Trump's base shows strong preferences for authoritarianism, what's he talking about? And continues supporting serial predator of children. Who? It's time to look this problem in the face, said Sexton. This isn't a political problem. This is a societal issue, a major existential problem with who we are and how we view the world. Yeah, I would agree. Anybody who thinks that the Constitution of the United States is incorrect, it is not good, and that includes the Bill of Rights and so on and so forth. Yeah, anybody who believes as they are does have a major existential problem with who we are and how we view the world. This is complete stupidness. MSNBC News host Joy Reid says rural Americans, the people in flyover country, you know, all of us, are the core threat to democracy. Do you believe that? Is she correct? Why or why not? 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. MSNBC News host Joy Reid says rural Americans are the core threat to democracy. Is she correct? I find this outrageous. I just find this completely outrageous. I cannot imagine anybody that is an honest to goodness news person, and I guess this woman isn't, being able to say things like that and still keep her job. I guess apparently she's still working. The problem isn't about Democrats and Republicans, but rather a substantial group in this country that are okay with a president who would stamp out free speech, free press, and are comfortable with foreign influence and collusion. This according to this Russ Sexton guy. I mean, seriously? I'm sorry, Jared Yates Sexton. Jared Yates Sexton. A substantial group in this country are okay with a president who would stamp out free speech, free press, and are comfortable with foreign influence and collusion. What is this guy, stupid? See, this is just plain dumb. It's not a political problem. It's a societal issue. Yeah, it sure is. You have no idea what you're talking about. And yet you have a major job on a major paper. There's a substantial group in this country who are okay with a president who would stamp out free speech, free press, and are comfortable with foreign influence and collusion. You know what? That is just plain gobbledygooky and garbage. It's just unbelievable. They only care about the laws and customs when they help them. They don't believe in the Constitution or any of the founding principles unless they're advantageous, said Sexton. They've always been here. They've been slaveholders. They've been Confederates. They've been our neighbors. They've been our family. Republicans fostered them as a means to push their political policies and leverage their worst instincts. Now they've lost hold of the leash and have been taken over from the inside. Sexton said Trump didn't create the issue, but is the total personification of his worldview. The liberal author added, "There's literally no telling in what they'll stand by," and noted that there are still Americans who believe that Adolf Hitler deserves high regard. Meantime, to have a national news host call rural America a core threat to our democracy is both striking arrogance and striking ignorance. Completely correct. Completely correct. There's no excuse for this. No excuse for somebody on any network, let alone MSNBC, to subsuppose that they could, I don't know, be part of this very, very small group of people that would be in charge after all these others decided to say, you know what, this isn't worth my time. And normally I would agree, except the country's at stake. Now we have newscasters saying rural Americans are the core threat to democracy. No, rural Americans are the sole core of democracy. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. You know, the people of the United States have always been rural. Benjamin Franklin is famous for saying, you know, as soon as we live on top of each other like they do in Europe, we'll have all the problems of Europe. We'll have all the political problems. We'll have the giant messes. We'll have the diseases. And you know what? That's exactly what's happening. Wow. I'm still just absolutely flummoxed by people who sit behind an anchor desk and spew whatever it is that they think is the most important thing to spew, even when it's not. It's just unbelievable. Let me ask you another question. We've seen a couple of backs and forths between the mainstream media and President Trump. Is that a good thing? You're listening to the Wells Report. This is the USA Radio Network.
All right, sir.
I don't know why either. I do.
Back in 1 minute.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
How much time do I have, bud?
You got 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Okay. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 844-927-6691. Toll free from anywhere. Join us, please. Please do join us. So the other day, a friend of ours, James O'Keefe, is the guy behind a group called Project Veritas. What he does is he does hidden camera journalism. He will go and he will talk to somebody with a hidden camera that they are unaware of, and they will say things that, well, should have cost Planned Parenthood its government funding, and more importantly, should have propelled some of their people into jail. However, this kind of thing is something that we all sort of take with a grain of salt because hidden camera interviews have a certain, shall we say, there's a certain level of, there's a certain size of salt grain that you have to take with any of these, regardless of who's doing them. Well, what happened is that they tried to get the Washington Post to jump on a story from a theoretical woman from Alabama. Her name, Jamie T. Phillips. She had a claim in a series of interviews that she had a sexual relationship with a former judge when she was 15. The judge impregnated her and then drove her to have an abortion. During the interviews with the Washington Post, she repeatedly pressed Post reporters to give their opinions on the effects of her claims and what they could have on Moore's candidacy if she went public. What ended up happening is that the Washington Post reporters caught her and Project Veritas in the middle of the sting operation. So now what ended up happening is that, well, even though this was purportedly an off-the-record conversation, if you lie to somebody, if you lie to a reporter, and you lie off the record and they find out that you've lied, your off-the-record status goes away in a big hurry, which is why the Washington Post is now publishing the fact that they almost got nailed by Project Veritas. Now, please don't think that this is something that doesn't work on a regular basis, because it does. It absolutely does. Dan Rather is no longer at the anchor desk of the CBS Evening News because he was set up with theoretical memos from the Air National Guard commander of George W. Bush regarding deferments during Vietnam. And so when you start thinking about all this stuff, you start thinking about how these people are indeed susceptible to these kinds of stories. I'm talking about people who are masquerading as journalists but are actually political operatives trying to do the political work that real political operatives can't do, which is to provide cover and comfort and capability to whichever political ideology they happen to believe in. Most of these people are liberal. Some of these people are not. They're all equally terrible. James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, providing an important service. However, they got to be careful. They got to be careful. What goes around does come around. And remember, I said that on this 28th day of November. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Back with more in a moment.
All right, man. Glad you got a clock, because I didn't have the music up right when it started that time.
No problem, my friend.
All right, cool. Well, I'm here if you need me. You got about 6 minutes or so.
Hold on a minute. Hang on a second. Oh, well, hold on. I had two people talking to me. Hold on a second. No. It's not what I want. Want that copied. Don't want that over there. Then I want to find Janet Bro. Janet Bro. Janet Bro. Janet Bro. Where did she go? Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Gosh dang it. Hang on. Janet Bro. No. Okay, here we go. All righty. Dang it. No. Unbelievable.
You need some info for Janet or something?
No, I'm just. Hang on a minute here. There we go. Let's try that. Good. All right, I'm back now. Yes, first of all, Mike, what did you need?
Oh, I was just saying I'm here if you need me, man. You got about 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And what did you need to, what did you need, my friend? Hey, Mike. My friend.
Yes.
Do we have a warm line telephone number?
Yeah, you mean like for guests or something?
Yes.
Okay. I got a number that just calls straight through. It's on the same lines as those, but it's one that will go through even if they're busy. I mean, not if they're busy, but it's the one number that we give to guests. Yeah.
Yeah, what is it?
1 second. It is 623
623
551
551
3353.
3353. 623. What is it again?
623. Yeah, that was it. I heard him.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
623 551 3353.
Yeah.
All right, back in 1 minute, man. All right, here we go. Back in 10 seconds.
Okay. North to south, coast to coast, this is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to the USA Radio Network. We're giving you the news and asking you about it as well. This is an interactive newscast where we bring you the news. We analyze the facts. We make commentary, and then we debate the issues of the day, the most important ones, day after day here on the Wells Report. Tell your friends about us. Continue to listen to us. Take part in the broadcast at 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. I promise we don't shill for the Republican Party. We are not somebody that is anti-Democrat to the point where they are greeted with a slap across the face when they call us. We are Americans. Our politics come directly from the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, and the Federalist. That's where it comes from. That's the American deal. If there is a political party out there that comports and indeed does the right thing by those documents, then certainly we will probably in more cases than not belong to that political party. But I don't see that as the case these days. Do you? What I see is an awful lot of people that believe the first three words of the Constitution of the United States say we the politicians. Sorry, not the case. We talk about the big issues of the day. A federal jury today has just acquitted a suspected Libyan militant leader of murder charges stemming from the 2012 Benghazi attacks that killed the U.S. ambassador, Chris Stevens, and three other Americans. Jurors did convict Ahmed Abu Khattala of terrorism-related charges. Prosecutors accused Abu Khattala of leading a rampage aimed at killing personnel and plundering maps and other property from the U.S. mission in Benghazi. Defense attorneys said their evidence against him was shoddy. U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens was killed in the attack, along with the State Department Information Management Officer. Let me try that again. A State Department Information Management Officer. Two more Americans died in a mortar attack at a nearby CIA complex. That is the very latest on that. Also, by the way, you need to be aware that the North Koreans fired yet another ballistic missile into the Sea of Japan. There have been scant details on that particular launch. We will bring whatever information we have as soon as it becomes available. And that is news since the morning papers. You're now up to date. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court of the United States is going to hear an epically important case. An epically important case. They will consider whether the government of the United States must obtain a warrant before accessing the rich treasure trove of data that cell phone providers collect about cell phones users' movements. We want to tell you that this comes to us from The Guardian. Jamil Jaffer and Alexander Abdo wrote this article for The Guardian UK. Among scholars and campaigners, there is broad agreement that this case could yield the most consequential privacy ruling in a generation, at least that. In fact, there are many of us who believe that this is, for all intents and purposes, an existential test of not just the Supreme Court of the United States, the justices who sit on the Supreme Court of the United States, and of course, the United States in general. The significance in this case are the rights protected by the First Amendment. The parties' briefs make little mention of the First Amendment, instead framing the dispute for understandable reasons as one about the right to privacy. Yet, the court's resolution of the case is likely to have far-reaching implications for freedom of speech, press, and association. The case is Carpenter versus the United States. It arises out of the government's prosecution of Timothy Carpenter for a series of armed robberies carried out in southeastern Michigan and northwestern Ohio several years ago. In the course of its investigation of the crimes, the government ordered Carpenter's cell phone provider to turn over data it had collected relating to Carpenter's movements. In response, the provider produced 186 pages listing every call that Carpenter had made over the 127-day period, as well as coordinates indicating where Carpenter had been at the beginning and end of each of those calls. Importantly, it turned over these records even though the government had not obtained a warrant based on probable cause. Carpenter asked the court to suppress the government's evidence under the Fourth Amendment, which protects the right to privacy. Many cell phone users have only a vague understanding of the extent to which providers monitor their movements. Your cell phone company tracks you everywhere you go. There is a nonstop, never-ending record of not just who you call, but at what time you call, where you were when you called. And yes, there is a recording of your phone call, and there is metadata about that phone call that will lead government investigators directly to all of the data that are a part of those phone calls. So in other words, you are being wiretapped and surveilled everywhere you go. All you have to do is carry your phone with you. Cell phones function by connecting to antennas. They're cell sites or cell towers that provide cellular service. Those cell sites, which are owned and operated by the cellular companies, are programmed to record the phones that connect to them and when. They record the direction from which the connecting phone signal is received, and often the distance from the phone from the cell site. So-called cell site location information is becoming ever more precise because the cellular network is becoming ever more dense. Analytical tools can be brought to bear on this information that are also becoming more sophisticated, meaning that investigators can draw reliable conclusions from smaller and smaller amounts of data. It's precisely because the information is so rich that the government is interested in accessing it. Privacy scholars are watching the Carpenter case very closely because it may require the Supreme Court to address the scope and continuing relevance of third-party records doctrine, a judicially developed rule that has sometimes been understood to mean that a person surrenders her constitutional privacy interests in information that she turns over to a third party. The government contends Carpenter lacks a constitutionally protected privacy interest in his location data because his cell phone was continually sharing that data with his cell phone provider. In my way of thinking, the cell phone provider in this case becomes a steward of that information. This is a process that is implicit in the agreement to provide communications. An email thus becomes someone's papers. Effects become the actual phone itself. The location capabilities that the phone actually uses to track are, by the way, also enhanced by the fact that each of the phones has a GPS device inside it. I mean, there's a lot more to this than just is being explained in this article. They've got you cold. And if, oh, by the way, the Supreme Court of the United States decides that that information is not yours? Say goodbye to the Fourth Amendment of the United States. Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Say goodbye. And then you can very slowly say goodbye to the rest of the rights involved in the United States. Because the most important one, free speech, free press, free association, free religion, is what this country was based on. Do something to get rid of that, and we become England back in the 1600s. Should the U.S. government be forced to obtain a search warrant before they investigate your personal federal data file? Now, that's a misnomer, by the way. It's not actually a federal data file, but every single cell phone provider has always agreed with the federal government that they will indeed provide that information, except for Apple. Apple says we won't open our telephones to you, so they have to go to private breakers, private hackers, to be able to get into your cell phone. And this all gets back to the fact that we do not know at this point as we have this conversation whether it is legal to have a secret from the government. It is of course, legal to have a secret from the government. It is called freedom and liberty. If you are not able to have a secret from the government, there is no freedom or liberty. All there is a bureaucrat that hasn't been alerted to your presence yet for proper processing and re-education. If the Supreme Court botches this decision, we go from 2017 to 1984. Like that. This is probably the most important decision that the Supreme Court is going to make in our lives, because this one strikes at the very, very heart of freedom and liberty in the United States. The only way you'd be able to avoid this is to throw away your cell phone. And you're saying, fine, I'll throw away, fine, I'll throw away my cell phone. What about your car? What? Yeah, your car has the same technology in it that your cell phone does. In fact, your car is a cell phone. In fact, they will call you on your car whenever they feel like it. So you're going to throw away your car too? You know, one of these days, in order to be an American, you're going to have to ride a horse. A lot of us say, hey, you know what? That's not really a problem. Until you get to the point where you get a ticket in case your horsey does its business out in the middle of the street. Privacy advocates are completely alarmed by the argument that there is a third-party records doctrine that if you turn over your records to somebody else, you give up your right to privacy. Much of the digital technology all of us rely on today requires us to share information passively with third parties. Visiting a website, sending an email, buying a book online, all of these things require sharing sensitive data with internet service providers, merchants, banks, and others. If this kind of commonplace and unavoidable information sharing is sufficient to extinguish constitutional rights, the digital age Fourth Amendment will be a dead letter. This is a very serious, serious issue. And you're listening to it on the Wells Report. This is the USA Radio Network. Back with more in just a moment.
All righty. You got 3 minutes, man.
Yep, I'm here. How much time do I have?
You got 1.5 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, here we go, man. Back in 10 seconds.
Should the U.S. government be forced to obtain a search warrant before they investigate your cell phone files? These are the files that we've been watching for many, many, many years. These are the ones that are being sucked up by any possible method necessary to be able to have everything that's on your cell phone all the time. It goes into these giant federal data hubs. All this information goes into a federal data hub, and it's all dutifully minded and watched very carefully by and identified with metadata. All of that. Now, this is information that's also held by the people who are your cell phone providers. The federal government can say, "Hey, we want that information," and so far, the cell phone providers can give it to them without a warrant. This must stop. The U.S. government must be forced to obtain a search warrant before investigating your personal cell phone files. This is Carpenter v. United States. If the Supreme Court says no, the government does not need a search warrant to go through that data, they will officially invalidate the Fourth Amendment. I want to know whether or not that's the moment you start sharpening your pitchfork. Because I assure you it will be the moment that I start sharpening mine. This government has grown and grown and grown and grown beyond the Constitution of the United States, mainly because we allowed it to. The people in Washington, D.C. want this country to be the Federal Republic of the United States, or the Federal Republic of America. We are the United States of America. The United States of America. The states have something to say. This is about federalism. This is about the states being able to create the country that they want to live in too. And this federal government is getting too big. And oh yeah, too expensive, especially for what it's giving back to us. If the Supreme Court says no on Carpenter v. United States, in other words, if indeed they say that as long as you share your information with a third party, even implicitly, I mean, even from a standpoint of involuntarily. For example, I don't have an agreement. I actually do. I have an agreement and you have an agreement with your cell phone providers that they can keep all that information. But clearly, that's your information. That's your intellectual property. They have no more rights to it than the man in the moon. They certainly can't give it to the government without a warrant. If the Supreme Court says no, they invalidate the Fourth Amendment. And that will have more than a chilling effect on the First Amendment. You will suddenly not be able to say anything. Every movement that you make will be tracked. Unless you're riding a horse and, oh, by the way, you better check your horse to make sure that it hasn't got an ARFID chip in it. That'll be the next thing they start doing. Suddenly, that 70 El Camino of mine looks like the car of choice. You're going to have to figure out a way to drive a car that doesn't phone home. This is a big deal. The government of the United States, the Supreme Court of the United States, until it is overturned, could indeed essentially write into oblivion the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, which would be in direct violation of their oaths of office. They're there to preserve the Constitution. They're to protect and defend it. If they render it obsolete by making the wrong decision in this case, sharpen your pitchfork, warm up your torches, and get ready to take some PTO time because we're all going to Washington. And no, we're not kidding. I mean, all of us. This is the Wells Report.
All right, man. You got just under 4 minutes.
Roger that. Hello? Hello? Hello?
You got a minute and a half.
Yes, sir.
All right, back in 15 seconds.
Thank you. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. I've got enough information now, I think, that I could venture to say that Hillary Clinton is without doubt absolutely addicted to public attention. Brian Freeman, writing in Newsmax, has reported that Hillary Clinton is vowing to stay involved in politics and fight to make sure, and this is a quote, that President Donald Trump does not continue to undermine the country's values. This particular article is being written about another one, this one in the Washington Post. Jonathan Capehart wrote an interview with Hillary Clinton that was published today. Speaking to Jonathan Capehart in the latest episode of Cape Up, Clinton called Trump a con artist and an equal opportunity bigot. She used the current debate over tax reform to demonstrate her belief that Trump is a fraud, saying that for all the president's talk about the GOP tax plan about helping the middle class, it's really, quote, meant to put money into the pockets of him and his family, unquote. It's meant to save his estate and therefore his children from having to pay taxes on whatever he's worth. It's meant as a gift to billionaires who he pays more attention to than the folks who put their faith in him during this election. Clinton also lashed out at Trump for being willing to use the dog whistle to attract people who had racial animosity, bigotry, and prejudice during the campaign as a sort of an equal opportunity bigot. Clinton said that Trump went after immigrants and foreigners, and he was very sexist and homophobic. He was obviously Islamophobic, but he kept coming back to race, and that's what was really stirring up a lot of feelings and rhetoric. Although Clinton said she hoped he would not continue on this tactic once he became the president, I think that Trump still plays the race card all the time. I really regret that because I think he does it for opportunistic political purposes. When in trouble in the Congress or the Russian investigation, his go-to targets are President Barack Obama and me, and African Americans. Clinton charged that the president is a little obsessed with me, but I think that's partly his own ego. because he knows I got more votes, and he knows that there are questions about the elections and the election that deserve answers. And he knows that I'm still speaking out. I haven't retreated under a rock somewhere. But it's also part of his political strategy. It's something that he knows his hardcore supporters will respond to. And he's trying to keep them on board. Let's go back to the top of this article, shall we? Hillary Clinton is vowing to stay in politics and fight to make sure that President Donald Trump does not continue to undermine the country's values. Does Hillary Clinton know anything about American values? 844-927-6691. Does Hillary Clinton know anything about American values? If so, which American value does she understand the best? 844-927-6691. Once again, you can expect to be treated respectfully here on this radio broadcast. So if you happen to be a Hillary supporter and you happen to have some comment as to whether or not Hillary Clinton knows anything about American values, I'd love to hear it. And I'd really love to hear which American values, as far as you're concerned, that Hillary Clinton understands the most. Please do take advantage of this. This radio broadcast is nonpartisan. It is, however, American. Which is why I'm very interested in whether or not you have some idea about whether Hillary knows anything about American values. And if you say yes, she does, well, which one? Which one does she understand the best? 844-927-6691. 844-927-6691. She used the current debate over tax reform to demonstrate her belief that Trump is a fraud, saying that the president's talk that the GOP tax plan is about helping the middle class is really meant to put money into the pockets of he and his family. It's meant to save his estate and therefore his children from having to pay taxes on whatever he's worth. Let's talk a little bit about that. The top 2% of wage earners in the United States, the top 2%, pay 70% of the taxes. That's thing number one. The other thing you need to keep in mind is this. Yes, this particular tax plan will get rid of the inheritance tax, and it should. You cannot tax someone's worth after they die. All of that money that has been amassed in the fortunes of these people, all that money has already been taxed. The property has been taxed. All the money, all the holdings, everything has been taxed. When it turns over to the kids, if that's the case, it will be taxed based on the spending that they do with it, just like everybody else's savings account. But once again, this is a failed presidential candidate times two that still has no clue about American economics, which is why I'm curious as to whether or not you have anything to share regarding Hillary Clinton knowing about American values. If so, which American values does she understand the best? Clinton lashed out at Trump for willing to use the dog whistle to attract people who had racial animosity, bigotry, and prejudice during the campaign. That sort of made him an equal opportunity bigot. Since equal opportunity is about extending equal opportunity to people of all races, creeds, colors, and so on, and genders, That is a completely nonsensical statement on its face. Clinton went on to say that Trump went after immigrants and foreigners, and he was very sexist and homophobic. He was obviously Islamophobic. But he kept coming back to race, and that was stirring up lots of feelings and rhetoric. First of all, let's talk a little bit about that. It's interesting when you start talking about how someone in the political sphere will use the, quote, dog whistle. There are two things about that. Thing number one, regular people can't hear a dog whistle. Can't hear a dog whistle. So I'm assuming that only Hillary can. Which takes us to the second part of that. If it is indeed a dog whistle and only dogs can hear it, in this particular case, racist dogs, how does Hillary know when the whistle is being blown? I'll tell you why. Because she's a racist. Now, is she a racist that would, say, for example, keep somebody out of a house in a neighborhood somewhere, or refuse service to someone because of the color of their skin? No, she's a much worse kind of racist. She's an institutional racist. She complains about this being a racist country, and then will be the first to argue about congressional districts being gerrymandered. The simple case of all of this is that there's institutional racism up and down the corporate and political structure. It's not Donald Trump's fault. The reason that he talked about people coming to this country is because they came to this country illegally. Now, I realize that Hillary is probably not somebody that has to worry about, I don't know, an illegal immigrant shooting her or raping her or kidnapping her or any of those things. She probably doesn't have to worry about any of that. But forgive me, Madam Not President, the rest of us do. No, you are not going to be victimized by a drunk illegal immigrant driver on some road somewhere. But you know what? It happens around here all the time. To stand up and say, hey, you know it's wrong that these people come to our country, live here illegally, live off the fat of the land, and then rape our daughters. It's just not right that they are able to do so with impunity. And who's responsible for their impunity? You and President Obama. Pointing out that President Obama made it possible for people to live in the United States illegally without even having to do the very barest of even following the law is not racism. It's pointing out governmental incompetence. Pointing out governmental incompetence is not racism. It is an assessment of truth. All of these things lead back to the first question that I've asked. Hillary Clinton says she's staying in politics to be able to protect American values. Does she know anything about American values? She certainly doesn't know anything about American law. For his part, President Trump says, why don't you go ahead and run again, Ms. Clinton? Why don't you do that? Two things would happen if indeed Hillary Clinton saw fit to run for president one more time. The first thing would be Donald Trump would win in a landslide. Absolutely win in a landslide. The other thing is that the rest of us would be able to see once and for all that this woman's seething ambition is the only thing that powers her. She has very little else to live for. As we continue here, she talks and she says that the president is obsessed with her. No, he's not. You just won't leave. And that leads me to my second question. Will the Democrat Party ever win another presidential election if Hillary Clinton is involved in the party's politics? The answer is no. No. Hillary Clinton is someone who has seen her political day. She needs to move on. She needs to go to some other she needs to go to some other place for some other mission. Telephone number is 844-927-6691, 844-927-6691. Let's get to Ray in Dallas. Ray, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Wells Report. Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to say I don't agree on the estate tax. I don't think it's an issue that's been very well thought through. They already allow $11 million to go through from a couple tax-free. So you really aren't covering. I mean, the few people that you're getting are fabulously wealthy people.
Well, yeah, but let me ask you a question. Let's say, for example, you're worth $1 billion.
Yes, sir.
When you die, the estate tax being 50%, that would be somewhere along the line of $450 million. Do you think that's a little bit excessive? That's a bit excessive, wouldn't you think?
Well, actually, when money passes hands.
So you're thinking, wait a minute, Ray, I got to ask, I'm going to make this real simple. This is a simple answer. Okay. One person dies who's a billionaire. You think it's okay that $500 million go to the government?
Well, the person can protect it better than that, but yes, as a matter of fact, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's absolute highway robbery. I think that is governmental theft.
You want me to tell him to hang on or?
No. Tell him thank you. Appreciate it. I know that guy.
Okay. All righty, sir. You got 2 minutes.
2 flipping minutes.
I told Ray that we were going to break right then. He was kind of like, "Oh, I didn't get a chance to say it." I just told him, "Hey, man, we're going to break so we didn't have. But
what he didn't want to, what he didn't have a chance to say what?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he just thought that you didn't get his point or something.
Uh-huh.
But
No, I got his point.
yeah.
My point is that I don't think anybody in this country should ever owe the government of the United States $450 million $450 million.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
They're not going to spend it the right way.
$450 million from one person out of the freaking question.
Oh, no kidding. And they're just going to spend it on some bull.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've spent $5.5 trillion in the United States. Did you get any of it?
Oh, no, definitely not.
I didn't get a piece of it.
No.
Actually, I talked about that.
Hi, we're back in 1 minute.
1 damn minute.
All right, back in 10 seconds.
You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 844-927-6691, 844-927-6691. Glenn Harlan Reynolds is an opinion columnist. He writes in USA Today. We came, we saw, he died, said Hillary Clinton. But according to this opinion columnist from USA Today, overthrowing Gaddafi was a humanitarian strategic debacle. Under former President George W. Bush in 2003, the United States negotiated an agreement with Libyan strongman Muammar Gaddafi. The deal, he would give up his weapons of mass destruction peacefully, and the United States would not try to depose him. Seemed like a good idea at the time. The Obama administration didn't stick to the deal. Instead, in an operation spearheaded by Clinton, the United States went ahead and toppled him anyway. The overthrow has turned out to be a debacle. Libya exploded into chaos. Civil war, refugees flooded into Europe, destabilizing governments there. But at the time, Clinton thought it was a great triumph. We came, we saw, he died. Her advisor at the time, the very vaporous Sidney Blumenthal, encouraged her to tout her successful strategy to the press as evidence of her fitness for the highest office in the land. It's surprising the extent to which Clinton has gotten a pass for this debacle, which represents a humanitarian and strategic failure. And oh, by the way, what does this have to do with a little country called North Korea? Well, remember that deal made in 2003 between George W. Bush and Muammar Gaddafi? How likely do you believe that Kim Jong-un is going to be willing to do some sort of deal regarding his particular country and his nuclear weapons when he sees, just in recent history, what the United States did with Muammar Gaddafi? Again, these are the words and thoughts of Glenn Harlan Reynolds, opinion columnist for USA Today. There is something else that you need to keep in mind. As a part of that chaos, the unintended political consequences of shall we say, substantiated political work. Black Africans are being sold in an open-air slave market. And according again to Glenn Harlan Reynolds, it's Hillary Clinton's fault. Footage from Libya released last week by CNN showed young men from sub-Saharan Africa being auctioned off as farm workers. Libya had been beset by chaos since NATO-backed forces overthrew long-serving ruler Muammar Gaddafi in October of 2011, during the time of Hillary Clinton in the State Department. The State Department now says the latest North Korean missile launch does not bode well for possible talks over the country's nuclear program. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said the ICBM launch shows the North isn't serious about negotiations. However, she said denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula is still a top goal. Nauert says the diplomacy is still the department's aim, but she said they're talking with allies about where to go in the future. Earlier, President Trump responded to the launch by vowing to take care of it. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has scheduled an emergency meeting on the latest missile launch for tomorrow afternoon. We will report on that story as we find out more about it. The executive producer of the Wells Report is the Philip Brown. My name is John David Wells. God bless you and yours. Thanks very much for joining us on this day, November 28th, 2017. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Wells Report.
All right, sir. Good show.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Tomorrow, if you have time, I'll try to make sure that we're not connected so you can connect from your end.
Okay, that's cool. That'll be fine. We don't have any problem with that, especially if it sounds better.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool, man. Have a good evening, and I'll talk to you in the morning.
All right, my brotherman.
Or in the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.